Congressman Khanna of California. He's a member of the House Oversight Committee, who did try to subpoena Elon Musk last week. I have to start with this exchange. We did want you to just respond to it, because there is something, frankly, emasculating about another man defending your own wife and children more than you do. And J.D. Vance, sort of committed that kind of emasculating act by being more vigorous in defending Marco Ellis than he was about defending Usha Vance. I found it weird. I just want to know what you thought of it.
Well, I thought his outburst was so undignified. All I said is this 25-year-old who has said to normalize Indian hate. Imagine if he had said normalize white hate, what J.D. Vance's reaction would have been. But he says normalize Indian hate. He says repeal the Civil Rights Act, meaning that people who are going to a restaurant now, the restaurant can have black people and Indian people sit separately from white people. And all I said is ask him to retract that and apologize before rehiring him. And he would not commit to that. In fact, this person apparently has been rehired, no public retraction, no acknowledgement of wrong, and yet they are basically firing anyone who utters the words DEI. It's hypocrisy.
And he was saying these things specifically about Silicon Valley. You represent Silicon Valley. There is a tendency, the Peter Thiels, the Sachs, Mr. Sachs, all South Africans, I will note, white South Africans, who seem to have really put their foot down, that they really don't like the idea of diversity and inclusion, and it angers them. Elon Musk has made that statement before. So that seems to be something that they're willing to allow in our government, right? But my question is, okay, you all don't care if somebody isn't diverse. Do you care if they're self-dealing? Elon Musk, a Silicon Valley person, he had contracts currently with 12 agencies for roughly $15 billion. That's in funding in the last decade. He has new contracts, apparently, with NASA for SpaceX. He just may have gotten a $400 million contract with the Department of State while he's gutting those departments for everyone else and for the poor, cutting aid to poor people. Who's auditing this?
Well, that's why we wanted him to come before the Oversight Committee. I mean, he doesn't have to do financial disclosures. I don't understand it. Every member of Congress has to do financial disclosures, everything in our assets, any transaction. The president does, the vice president does. He doesn't have to do that. He doesn't have to go through the government ethics to recuse himself.
Does Normalize Indian Hate Kid have to? Does Big Balls, his name, do they have to file any disclosure forms?
I don't know. I don't think so. I mean,
do you have a full list on the Oversight Committee of who they are?
We need to know who they are. How are they being paid? I mean, what budget authorized their payment? Whether did they get this access to sensitive information from the Treasury Department while they were federal employees or before they were federal employees? Because it's illegal if they weren't made federal employees. Those are unanswered questions.
And you all don't know that, and you're on the Oversight Committee.
We're on the Oversight Committee because they have not given us any of this information. Look, Musk, also, look at where he started. If you really cared about the deficit, if you really cared about the $36 trillion of deficit, would you start your cuts with the agency that's 0.1% of the federal budget, USAID?
USAID, yeah.
Or would you look at the Pentagon, which is 56%? Or would you look at Medicare Advantage fraud? Or would you look at the pharmaceutical companies that are ripping off Medicare? And President Biden had the guts after many, many years to actually go after them and negotiate. This is a farce. It's a cultural issue. It's a cultural war that they're waging, going after programs that are helping Africans who are dying of malaria, dying of AIDS, which George W. Bush had the moral conscience to help. That's what they're going after.
Let me ask you this, because we know that there is fraud and abuse. We know that Rick Scott, the current senior senator from Florida, his former company, and he claimed to know nothing about it when he was CEO, committed record Medicare fraud. I mean, it was the largest Medicare and Medicaid and TRICARE fraud in the history of the United States. His company, this is before Florida decided to make him governor and then senator. He pretended he didn't know anything. He said he didn't know anything about it. So that happens, right? But that's not what they're going after. To your point, the Pentagon is definitely bloated. We've all remember the stories growing up about the $50 hammers.
Right.
Have you seen any evidence that these computer programmers are looking at that kind of stuff?
No, they haven't started with that. And that's why initially I wrote an op-ed at MSNBC. Senator Warren, Senator Sanders, we said, okay, here are the places
to start looking.
Here are the places you can cut. And we're willing to give you an open hearing. The Democrats actually have been the ones railing against this wasteful spending. We're the ones who've been railing against the fraud on Medicare Advantage, on Medicare, because we're the ones who won Medicare for all. And he didn't take us up on that.
Right.
Instead, he hires these folks to stop payments for Medicaid for a few hours. And then we start hearing about these cuts to programs of helping kids in Africa, cuts to cancer funding research, cuts to the Department of Education that funds schools in working class neighborhoods, by the way, largely in Trump districts.
Yeah. Let me play for you what Elon Musk said in his press conference that he allowed Donald Trump to attend in the Oval. Take a listen.
We actually are trying to be as transparent as possible. In fact, we post our actions to the DOGE handle on X and to the DOGE website. So all of our actions are maximally transparent.
If you have received billions of dollars in contracts from the Pentagon, and the president's directing you to look into the Department of Defense, is that a conflict of interest?
And are going to do at the president's request.
Does that present a conflict of interest for you?
No, because you'd have to look at the individual contract and say, first of all, I'm not the one, filing the contract. It's people at SpaceX.
Oh, right. It's not him. It's his company. Is the Occam's razor here answer that Elon Musk and Donald Trump and friends are gutting all of these social services and money for poor people and people in other countries because in the end, what they really want to do is pass a big tax cut. So on top of those contracts, SpaceX, Tesla, and Elon Musk don't have to pay taxes.
I think it's two things. I think they want the tax breaks for their very, very wealthy folks and their fine-cutting benefits for the working class and middle-class Americans, many of whom who voted for Trump. It's a total betrayal. Mm-hmm. But I think it's something deeper. They also want to kneecap the administrative state. They don't want regulation. They don't want civil servants. They want basically a free market that is left alone. They view government as oppressive, as an obstacle. This is the techno-libertarianism. And people really need to take that ideology seriously. Some of these folks think they're better than us, that they should be making the rules.
They think they're genetically superior and that they should just be able to do whatever they want.
It's a threat to democracy, the very core of democracy. It's like, do we want a government where everyone is participating? One thing where Elon admits, right, he misspoke. It wasn't to Gaza, it was to Mozambique.
Condoms to Gaza.
This is why we have a Congress, so other people get to ask you questions.
And you're in Congress because you work for the American people. Elon Musk just works for himself and his own enrichment. Congressman Khanna, thank you.
Thank you for having me.